So I think we're gonna, it's 10 after 2, and Shirley and Rebecca have to make their way to Sault Ste. Marie tonight, which is a long, long drive. So we're just gonna get started, but certainly not without introduction. And so I just need to begin by saying what a pleasure it is to have Shirley here. Shirley Ida Williams was my Ojibwe professor when I was at Trent in 1990 and 91. And so to have her here right now as a teacher again is such a pleasure. So, miigwech. Just wanted to begin by acknowledging that we're sitting right now along the Haldimand Tract, land that belongs to the Haudenosaunee people, and we are very grateful to them for this space. So we'd like to start that way. So I wanted to begin by letting you know that Shirley's an educator. She's an elder. She's done many things with language. But I wanted to tell you one of the first words I remember learning from her. Moccasin. Moccasin means bread. And as we are here together, sitting around tables and drinking tea, which I hope you will help yourself to, and some cider and eating cookies, I'd like to think of this as a table filled with bread. But the bread is story. The bread is knowledge. The bread is that way we move forward toward reconciliation. So, Shirley, thanks for the Moccasin and for what you'll deliver today. And I'd like to introduce Rebecca as well, as sitting beside her. Rebecca has come as her driver, as her helper, and has a lot to offer. So here we go. Here we go. Shirley Williams.
Thank you for the introduction. It's great to be here. Nice day. Woke up this morning with the sun coming out, so it's really nice to be here. I've been in Guelph and the University of Waterloo. Not been in Kitchener, right in downtown, so I sort of got lost when I drove in yesterday. Not quite familiar. I've driven through, but it just goes one ear and out the other. Anyway, my name is Moccasin Okwe, which is Eagle Woman in our language, and I am also from the Bird Clan. I was born and raised in Wikwemekong, Manitoulin Island, many years ago. And I went to residential school. I'm a survivor, and I've always wondered, that there was something wrong with me. And I wanted to find out what that was. And the other thing is, I quit school when I was 16. One of the things that we used to say when we were in residential school is, it's better to be dumb and then to endure what we are enduring in the school. So at 16, we would leave the school, most of us anyway. So I too left when I was 16, not because I didn't like the education, but there was an incident that happened when I was 16, and so I left school, and I asked my parents if I could leave school. And they gave permission, but they said, you have to go to work, you have to find a job. And then my father took a feather And he said, this feather here, he says, this part here, you never went to residential school that they're sending you away until you were 10 years old. Is that is the traditional education that you got from us. Then you went to school in the academic world on the other side of the feather. That's okay too. You've completed that. Maybe you're coming home to finish this part here. And maybe someday the other part you'll finish. So I've always wondered about that. And I know there were 4 things he told me when I was getting on a bus. Number 1 is, do not forget who you are. Do not forget your language. No matter what they do to you and dare be strong. And the fourth one is, go and find out about the Inanak and come back and teach us. Well, I never found out about the Inanak. We weren't allowed to speak. We weren't allowed to speak about the culture. We weren't allowed to speak in our own language. It was forbidden for us to speak our language. But because I went to school at the age of 10, I had a firmly foundation in my head that I was a fluent speaker. So they didn't take that away from me while I was in there. There were some children that were in there. They were 5 years old. And because they're early, they forgot the language, even though they heard it. The nuns really made it so nice for you, and we came to believe them that they were right. One of the things that they always told us is, it's better for you to be here because you can turn on the taps. Because when you're at home, you have to go and carry the water. And you have to go outside to go to the toilet at 50 below zero. And here you can go inside. I thought, yeah, that's true. And many other things that they would tell us that, why we should like the school. We came to believe them, a lot of us, and some people chose to forget the language. But I didn't. Maybe I was stubborn. I did forget a lot of things, but some of the things that I was taught. Anyway, during that journey, while I was looking for Shirley, I took side roads. I quit school, but then I always thought I would go back to school. So when I got a job at the hospital, my first job was a laundry lady, and the nuns and the nurses found out that I was a fluent speaker. I could speak in English and I could speak in Ojibwe. And there were a lot of patients that were coming in that were not speaking in English, so they used to run downstairs to come and get me to interpret. And so they got the price of one. So the supervisor in the laundromat was not very pleased with me because I would be taking off quite a few times, 20 minutes out of my job or an hour or whatever, however long they needed me upstairs to interpret. So the doctor said, why don't you bring her upstairs, find her a job on the floor here, it'd be easier so that we can access her. And then, so they put me on the floor and I became a scrubber. And the doctor come by and he saw me there, and he said, what is she doing scrubbing the floors? She's smart enough. Why don't you train her as a nurse's aide? So I was promoted the next day. I became a nurse's aide working on the floor. And because I was easily accessible to interpret. So many things happened after when I was there. I decided that I would continue my education and look for a night school or take, whatever I could. At that time, there was no adult education. You had to go to regular school, but if you're working during the daytime, you just missed out altogether. So that didn't work for me. So I decided that there were a lot of opportunities in Toronto. So that's where I went, and There I found a nice school to go to school, finish my grade 9 and 10. And I took also correspondence courses. While I was in grade 10, I think, working during the day, and I had this dream that seemed like I was back in a residential school. And there were a lot of windows like this behind me. In the front, there was a river, and on the other side, there was an orange roof on that side. When I looked on this side, there was a bridge that was going over to that side. Where I was standing, it was ugly, it was brown, and I wanted to get over on the other side, and I couldn't. I couldn't move. I was stagnant. And I thought, gee, I want to get over on the other side, and I started to cry because I couldn't move. And then the moon, your dreams, there's flashes, and all of a sudden it was nighttime. And in the nighttime there's the moon, and the moon was shining out there. And the moon spoke, and I remember the moon saying to me, "This is your home, Shirley." And then I started to cry. And I woke myself up crying, wondered what that dream was about. And I went back to my own people and asked them, because dreams are very significant in our culture. So I went back to my own people asking them, what that dream was about. And they said, only you can interpret that dream. You will find out in time. I went to many different elders to tell them about this dream, and they didn't know what that dream meant. After many years, I went home to look after my parents because they were getting old, and I went to look after them. And so there was an ad in the paper that says grade 11 and 12, you can finish adult education at a high school level. So that's where I went. And then I thought, oh, so glad to finish my grade 12. And then the next day I was reading a paper, and then I saw a little wee ad in there. It says Native Studies. And I thought, hey, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I want. But it's so far away. It's at Trent University in Peterborough. So I took my journey. My marriage at the same time was breaking up anyway. It was good in a sense that I was going to discover who Shirley was. So I went back to home, and then I applied, and lo and behold, I got accepted. So I ended up going to Trent University in September. Well, it was a diploma program where Aboriginal students were allowed, if you didn't have grade 13, that you can apply and go. So that's where I went. It was funny ending up, it seemed like I was back in a residential school, but the next day I was told you had to go and meet the orientation with the rest of the students at Trent University. So I was kind of rich. I had my own car, but it was a race car with rusty and flaps on. So I ended up going to Trent University to meet the other students. And lo and behold, while I was waiting there, I was standing behind this big building. And all of a sudden, this overwhelming feeling came that I had been there before. And I thought, gee, I feel funny, I'm looking at, I've been here before. There's the river, there's the building with the orange roof, there's lots of windows behind me, which is what you call the Bata Library. And then the moon that says, this is your home. And then I thought, I guess I am home. So I was willing to take Native Studies and do whatever I could. It's at the university, and I was with the young people, and I didn't know how they were going to react to me because I was much older. Anyway, that's how I started. So while I was going to school, everything turned out There was an elder that came from out west one day and who talked to us in a group like you're sitting here, but we were sitting in a circle. And that morning, I was sitting on my left here, and he said, "What is it that you always wanted to be?" And to me, I always wanted to become a nurse. And so that's what I said, and everybody had their say as to who they wanted to become. For 4 days, intensive workshop that we did, and on the fourth day, he came back again. And then he said, I was sitting in the same place, and he says, "You, grandmother," he says, you are a culture leader. You know the language, and you know who you are." He says, "The purpose of your life is to restore the culture and language to your people, to nurse the minds of your people." And I thought, ooh. I thought, does he mean a teacher, or does he mean, he says, "You are a nurse." And I thought, gee, if I'm a nurse, I need, you need a piece of paper, and you need training. But he was talking about mental health. I didn't understand it at that time, but I did. So ever since then, when I went going to school, this has always led to language and culture. When I graduated with a BA, I found another piece of paper, and I was hired to teach language and culture at Trent University. And then I thought, how am I going to teach the university students on language and culture? How do I mash that too? They're going to eat me alive, because they're going to say, why is the AG on there? Why is it animate? And why is this inanimate? Why is there a plural in here? How do you say this? And I thought, oh my God, I better go on. I know the language, and I'm a fluent speaker, but how do I teach it? And so I went back to school again. At Lakehead University, there was a little piece of paper that I found. It says, "First intake for Native Language Instructors Program at Lakehead University." So I applied, and that's where I ended up. And there I met a linguist. And as they were teaching the language, I knew everything what they were talking about already. And I was looking at when you were saying, is this animate or inanimate? Different words, if they were on the third, or verbs. And I found myself, yeah, I know that, I know this. I could be teaching that too. So I went through school for 4 summers to learn how to read and write in the Ojibwe language. And we call it Anishinaabe language. That's the way we say it. So I began my career writing the language in many different ways. I learned that the outline of the writing system, which was revised by a linguist called Baraka Fierro writing system, who's a linguist, who taught us, who did the research on the Algonquin peoples. Algonquin language is the mother language for many other languages. Algonquin language reaches from the East Coast, from Mi'kmaq, right to the foot of the Rockies, to the Boreal Forest of the north and the south as far as Mississauga, that I can understand many of the speakers. He found out that we had unique sounds when we speak. Found out that we had vowels, and we had 3 short vowels and 4 long vowels. The 3 short vowels we have are I, A, and O. The long vowels that we have are I, double A, double O, and an E. Those are the 4 long vowels that we have. Then we have the consonant vowel syllable that we have. Then we found out also that we have 2 unique sounds. First one is we have nasal sound. Words, when we say different words, the air stops through here. So when you talk, the air comes out and then it lets go. So they call those the nasal sound. And we have 4 of those letters that indicate that we have those kind of sounds. NH, HN, NS, and NZ. Those are the letters that will give you the key to tell you they have a nasal sound. We also, the second one that we have unique sound is the glottal stop. And the glottal stop is a catch in the throat. That is, when you speak, the air stops right here where the throat comes out. It'll stop there, we'll hold it, and then it lets the air out, and then the sound comes out. When I was teaching at Trent University, you know, the students walking behind you or in the front, whatever. And I couldn't imagine the kind of language that they were using. There's no young kids here, except for one. Every time we walk down the hall, you know, I would hear this, they hear the students say, fuck this and fuck that, you know. And I thought, oh my God, you know, we don't even have those sounds, you know. So we have letters that we borrowed the English letter writing system, but we have 7 letters that we don't have. Number 1 is we don't have an F sound. We don't have an L. Q, R, U, V, and an X. So learning and just listening from the students gave me a lot of ideas. So when I was teaching the language, I thought one of the mentors that I had was Fred Wheatley. He was the one that was teaching the language before I was. So he said that the way we should be teaching the language, education should be fun. Teaching language should be fun. Make it fun, he told me. And I thought, gee, how do we do that? Because when you're teaching the language, it's like French and German and all of that, it's pretty bland. And so I thought, well, I have to find ways, techniques, how to teach the language in the best way that we can, and find ways how students will like it. And so I learned how to do many different things, like even playing bingo. We had Anishinaabe words, and I would buy all the prizes. And the students just loved that. And I would buy something that they would need, like socks and toothbrushes and toothpaste and pens and letters, just for them to learn. And many different techniques of what is the best practice for them to learn the language. Because I know, for example, for myself, learning the language was not very easy. Because we were forbidden to speak our own language, we had to learn the English language in 3 months' time. I spoke the language within 3 months because we weren't allowed to speak in our own language. And so I had empathy and understood the other students that were there. If they're going to learn the Ojibwe language or Anishinaabe language, that they are going to have a hard time. That means I have to make it fun. And so a lot of students said that they would have a lot of fun. They did have a lot of fun in taking the language because it made them feel comfortable and doing other things while I was teaching the language. As I developed and I started teaching the language, I began to be better also for myself in teaching in different ways, because When I first started, there was no books of whatsoever in any shape or form. We started writing on the board and using, orally. And but I started in 1986 teaching the language, and so I found ways and means because the university students are very much used to writing, and so writing the language made it more easier for them so that they could learn. So we had flashcards and everything, like cutouts and catalogs, whatever I was teaching. One year I had, those calendars. There's some pictures of animals and that. I would collect those, and I put a call out to other professors, if they're going to throw the calendars out, please don't give them to Shirley Williams. And so I would cut those out, and that would become my teaching tool. So anyway, right up to today now, thank God for the computers and media, because we can now record our stories in many different ways now and be able to hear the sound, which wasn't when we first started. Anyway, can you, that white one, can you show it to the big one? Yeah. That one is research that I've done starting in 1986. And it took me a while to do all of the words in there. There's everything, there's 6 chapters in there with names of trees and fish and so on. And I used my family as my resources, because they knew the language and that. So that's what it started off. And the second book is it's a language course that I use. Yeah. This book here is a course text that I started to use for the students. Part of that, I took excerpts. When I started out, I asked the students, what they would like to learn. And so they wrote on the pieces of paper, and all of the words that they said, or themes that they came out with, all of those are in there. And of course, what I thought that they should know, because we have, in Ojibwe, we have 5 different dialects right in Anishinaabe itself. We have the Eastern Ojibwe, we have the Central Manitoulin dialect, we have the Western Ojibwe, we have the Northern Ojibwe, we also have the Chippewa, which is in the States. So all of those, we can understand each other. But what's been happening to our people, they always say, that's not how we say it. So I get this really, sometimes it really gets to me. I had a student, I forgot to tell him before. I had the student who was hitchhiking, and she got a ride with a Curve Lake First Nation person. So she was so proud. She met this Anishinaabe man who was giving her a ride, so she was carrying conversation. And so she said, they were talking away. So he says, she said, Ani, and then he says, Anin, with an N emphasis in there. And so that's not how Professor Williams says it. So this man approached me later to tell me about it, So I had to go back to my students and tell them that that's not a proper way of saying or telling somebody. How he said, just in different dialects, pronunciation, how he said, it's the same thing. So I says, you don't tell anybody that's how you say it, or don't say that I'm the Bible, So we all have different dialects, that's okay. And it's just different ways of saying, or different sounds, how you say it, So I began to write because there was a need as teachers going to Lakehead University, there was a need for people for resources. One of the things there was working from 1986 on, there was quite a few materials for early childhood education and early grades, and there was some for adults, but we were missing the teens, like the high school. So we had to do research. So we went back, each of us that were from different areas, we said, let's do our own research. Let's go back to our elders and ask them, why are these students not taking the courses? The Anishinaabe language courses were being offered, but they weren't taking them. And what we were hearing was the negative responses was, I don't need to learn that language. I'm already Anishinaabe. And the other one is, I don't need to learn the language. What good is it for me? I want to get a job teaching the language. And I don't want them to take that course because they just have homemade things. I'd rather take the French because they have beautiful language materials and we don't. And I'm ashamed to take our Anishinaabe language. So we had to turn that to the negatives to positive. How do we influence our own people? So, and each of us, there were teachers that were there, went back to our communities and asked them, how can we improve that? What can we do to our people for, to help them, to restore what has been because of colonialization? How can we restore what's been happening to our own people? How can we enhance the language and make it nice for them? So we began our journey again. Each of us went to our own communities, and I went to Wiki. And I gathered the elders there, and one of the elders said, well, have you asked the young people as to what they would like to learn? And we said, no. And so I thought, well, okay. My nephew was a vice president and a vice principal. So I asked him if I could have 3 classes to go in there and do a little bit of research. So I went over there and I asked the kids, what is it that could help us to turn those messages, negative messages, out to their people? How can we do that? And what is it, why don't you take the language? What does the language mean to you? And what is it that we can improve on it? And so the 3rd class I went to, there was a group of boys, mostly boys, not so many girls, but there was mostly boys. So one of the little boys, when I asked that question, the little boy put up his hand like this, miss, so I said, yes. I said, what would you like? And so he says, well, I would like to learn how the words in hockey. I would like to learn hockey words. And I said, well, that's not very academic. I didn't say that to him. But I thought, to myself, well, I asked the questions and he's giving me the answer. So I says, why would you want to learn about the hockey words? He says, well, I belong to a team here and we're always losing. If we knew the language, and then the opponents would know what we are saying, maybe we would win. I thought, well, that's a good answer. He's about 12 or 13-year-old. I thought, that's a good answer, and I told him that too. So I went back home. We didn't have a meeting until the end of October. So at the beginning of October, there was a big tournament going on near Timmins area. And this MC name was Chichu, and he was speaking in Ojibwe. Of course, I understand a little bit of Ojibwe. Big hockey tournament going on. And then all of a sudden, I was watching it, and it made me think about that little boy. And I hadn't started it or anything. So I was thinking about that little boy, and then I thought, oh, wouldn't that be fun if we made a hockey CD-ROM like that, And then I thought, and then I heard him say, this MC saying, Oh, chichuish, cornering with a guinness one. Pakwan. I mean, pak kun at the end is a locative word, or corner is also English, and you put ing on it. That means it make it a locative at the corner or in the corner, and all of that. So I started to laugh, and I thought, well, geez, that's so jiggleish to us, you know. So, and then I thought, gee, that really motivated me to get going. So I thought, we don't have any money. Nobody was sponsoring me. And every time I asked for funding, I would get turned down because it was not economical. So I thought, I'm going to do it on my own. I don't care if I use my own money, I'm going to do it. So I went to my friend in Walpole Island, and I took flip charts. And we had flip charts all over, and I told her what I wanted. You know, in the arena, what's in the arena? What kind of shapes are they? What colors are they? Contents in the arena. What belongs in the arena? Hockey players. What kind of clothing do they have? Equipment. Injuries. Kinds of food that they should eat if they're playing hockey. Hockey rules. You know, all of these things. And then we had to have people that were role models, Nishnawbe role models. We couldn't find very many NHL role models, so that sort of gave me a very limited amount of role models that I wanted or needed. And but I chose NHL and also choose some students, my own nephews and people that I know that are good players, and what we used was those boys, and I put bubbles on them. So if you click on the thing, it'll say in English, and if you click it again, it will say in Ojibwe. But it tells you, like, stay out of the penalty box. You're not going to win if you stay and be in a penalty box all the time. And all of those words that I found in the hockey rules, I guess, you know. So it was really fun to do that. So can you show the hockey thing? That one there. It's called Shoshkwate Kamagat, means rip-roaring hockey. And if you put that in the computer, it'll come up. It's fit for Mac and also PC. And you can go through all of the... I showed it to the elders after, and they said, well, where are they going to learn how to read and write? So I had to put in the vowel song. And the second one is they had to, when they saw it again, and they said, well, whenever there's a hockey tournament, you know, there's Old Canada song. So you need Old Canada song in the Anishinaabe. So I put in the Anishinaabe song in that CD. And then there had to be a conversation. You can't just put the words in there. So I created a dialogue. The second part of that is a dialogue in there. And I created the scene, typically what would happen in on reserve. So on reserve, if there's a hockey tournament going on, some people don't know about it, but they might be walking by. So there's two people in this conversation. So he approaches the other guy and he says, well, what's going on? He says, well, the Wikihawks are playing. And I translate this in a language. And he says, oh, he says, is your son playing? He says, yeah, my son is playing. And he says, how much does it cost to get in? He says, well, it costs $2. So he digs in his pocket, but he doesn't have any money. He says, can I borrow you $2? So they go, and he says, well, I have $2. I'll pay you way in to go and watch the hockey game. So they go into the arena. And of course, in the Anishinaabe, you know, they like to eat. Doesn't matter where you get going. You know, first place they hit, there's a restaurant. So, and in this case, it's a canteen. So they go into the canteen, and we don't really have a word for a hot dog, but that's what they wanted, and hot chocolate and tea, whatever. And then they go and watch on the stand to see when the hockey players are coming. And of course, I use all of the words like the sweaters, how small or tall or big they are, whatever, good skates and how they're skating. I put that all in there. So anyway, the next summer I went back to these people that talked to me about the hockey, and then I says, my nephew, I says, can you help me because I need to make that? And so I'll rent the arena, I'll pay for the arena, but if you can collect 12 boys, I says, or maybe more, because we got to have extra boys. I says, and asked them if we can get permission from the parents, if we can do this and what we're doing. And they were all for it. So we rented the arena, and they brought the boys to come and practice. And everything that was in the image, what I wanted them to do, like for commands, skate backwards, skate forward, skate fast, hit him. All of those are in there. So that's what I put in that. So, and then the boys, they got their gas money, food, hamburgers and French fries at the end, and they got a CD-ROM when I finished the project. So that's those are some of the things, and there are many more that I've done in the past, stories and things like that. So I'd like to go ahead and talk. This is the latest one. I came to speak in 1984 in the Hamilton Friendship Center, and in this conference, there was a journalist that was sitting there. And this conference was about native child rearing practices. And they asked me if I could speak on native child rearing practices. And so I said, yeah, I could, So I thought about my childhood, some of the things that I learned. This was important to them. So I went jot down a few things that I would talk about. I had an hour to speak. When the journalist was sitting there, he took a lot of notes. And then after when I finished, she come back to me and said, can you make this, did you know that you are a poet? And I said, no. I hated poetry when I went to school. I said, because we studied both Shakespeare in a residential school, so Shakespeare did not mean anything to me at all. And can you put that in in poetry form, in a story form? And so yes, I could. And then I was asked, I was teaching. After I graduated at Lakehead, I was asked to go and teach orthography for the language teachers. And I used a story that I wrote at that time. And they were always asking me, when are you going to publish it? When are you going to translate it in language? Because it's really good. Because there's so many lessons in there. So I didn't get around to, I needed illustrations. And so I didn't know, I met one of my big sisters from the residential school, and she was working at the Civic Hospital. And I didn't know that she was an illustrator while she was just doodling. And so I told her about my project. And so she said, I can help you with that. She said, let me try it. So she wrote the illustrations of the book. And just before I finished it, she passed away. So this is the last project that I did with her. This is called When I Was a Child. And this is the first one here. I just want a few, I know you probably won't understand this now, but just so that you're here, maybe I'll test you after. It says, Gibagachia, Gipagigo Kemeka, Nin Minon Nospa. When I was a child, I used to go fishing along with my father. Next one. He used to say to me, "Listen, my daughter, listen to the sounds of the boat. Do you hear water splashing against the boat?" And I'd say, "Oh yes, Father." Oops. He said, "The wood of the boat is talking to the water spirit. Shh, listen. They are singing together." And when I listened, my ears became sharp to the sounds of the outside world. The sound of the boat groaned and creaked, for she, the Nodin, was getting old. The wind creaked, squealed, and squeaked, sometimes rusty, sometimes clear. Her sounds combined with the sounds of the water splashing against the wind. They made beautiful sounds together. They sang and sang about a child called Shirley. "Shirley, I am the wind. I will carry you, and your father, John Simon." My father used to say, "Always listen, always be aware, for your ears are not for decorations. Listen and take a look. Use the beauty of the world. Use your eyes to see the beauty. When you see something, only you can see it. Only you can interpret what you see. Look at how clear the water is. When I looked, I saw beauty, water, shining and dancing before my eyes. To see, to look, to appreciate the beauty of things is a prayer," he said. Then I felt good. I felt gladness. I felt joy. I felt good. I felt whole. Beauty, life so precious. It's a gift from the Master, I thought. My father used to say, "Use everything you have and always give thanks for what you see, for someday you may not see." In the morning, always face the sun, for the sun gives heat and light. Be sure to say always thank you. When the night comes, wait for the moon. She provides the night light for us to see, so we won't get lost. Oops, skipping a page here. "Surely, my daughter, let us stop to fish, for we are near the rocks. Look into the water until you see 3 large rocks, for that's our fishing mark." "Shh, hear the rocks speak, for they have a spirit too. Whenever you are in trouble, speak to the rock, for you have a special stone too. The stone we have of us is the foundation of us. We have to have a stone to stand on when we are weak. Life is like sharp rocks, full of mountains to climb. So climb hard, my daughter, and you will be strong. Always, my child, look and listen. Use your eyes to see the world. Breathe the air, for you will feel whole," he said. Then I felt a bite on my line. "It's a fish," I yelled. Father smiled, then laughed so hard that I lost my line. "Let's go home," he said. "Thank you, wind." Then I heard the wind sing. "We will go home, surely. I will carry you home." And that's the end of the story. This here, the pictures are only in black and white. My friend, she did them in color, but when we scanned them, they didn't come out right. The color didn't. So I just left it as black and white for children to color on your own, or big kids can color also. But I will be looking for a media person to see if they can darken those so they'll be able to have a color. So this is here, the story started in 1984, and it's the teachings that I've been taught through experiences and along with my father and mother, who taught me many different things. My mother is the one that taught me about the bread. Whenever we made bread, we would, go this way. And she always said, don't be beating it, because the people that are going to eat that bread, they have to eat it. Make sure you take care of it, because you're putting a spirit in there. So that spirit is going to transfer when people eat that. So be careful of the bread. That's what she always said. So I always remember those stories. They're very true. They're very real. And so I know our voices from the Anishinaabe language have not been heard to tell our own stories as to how we learned, what we did. And so I'm coming out with those kind of stories. The other story that I would like to tell, which I have no illustrations for, is it's called, I'm doing stories. I've always been asked, when are you going to write your bio? And I've been reluctantly trying to do that, because if you write it, and I always think, geez, I'm getting close to 80. So I think I better get started, because I want to leave a legacy. And the legacy of my childhood, and I see that there is a need, because our children at home, the Anishinaabe children, are committing suicides, and they're turning to other things that are not good for the soul of our people. So I thought if we told those stories, maybe they'll take another journey, another way of doing things, how we were brought up, because it's quite different. In my time, I was born in a time of only dogs and horses and canoes by travel, and then later on trucks and cars. We didn't have any TV or anything like that. We had radio much later on, but you can only turn the radio on during news time, because it was run by battery. And so this story is about, again, my mother, and it's called The Goat Story. The goat story goes something like this. My mother, one morning, as we were gathering, she says, "Kabapa, your father, he wants butter. He gave me some money. We have to go to the next door neighbor, because they had cows, chickens, pigs. They had a big farm. So that's where we were going. And we wanted to go there because we knew there were children there, and they had big swings. So we were really gung-ho and going. So we went, and we walked down a dirt road. And as we were walking on the road, some of us were skipping and hopping along and going to this place. And when we got to the place, for us children, if the adults were speaking, we didn't stick around. We went out. We left them their privacy so that they can speak to one another. So we ran through the back door, because we knew there were swings, so we could go and play until it was time for us to go home. And no sooner than that, my mother yelled out, "Ambe!" meaning, let's go, it's time to go home. Well, my brother, he didn't want to go home. He was having such a good time, and he didn't want to go home, and he was trying to convince my mother, couldn't you visit some more? Couldn't we stay some more? And he was making all kinds of excuses. And my mother says, no, it's time to go home. We need to make that butter. We need to take the milk home. And so the rest of the girls were very obedient. We started walking. But the two boys were very reluctant. The middle boy, especially. So we start walking, and then he's following behind. And the house was on top of the hill, and we had to walk down to catch the main highway, which is a dirt road. So we were walking there, and the further we got away from the house, my brother cried harder. My mother must have been tired of his voice and said, "Sha, Shabos kabidwemo," meaning you'll call for the goat. Just as she said that, there was a fence that looked like this, and on top we heard a sound of somebody landing on the fence. And when we looked, and lo and behold, there was a goat. And the goat was snorting and looking at us. "See," my mother said, "you guys run home, take the milk and take your sister," because I was the smallest then. And we started running. And my two sisters held me like this, and they were running so fast that I just lifted my legs, folded my legs, and then they ran. And I was worried about my mother because she says, "I'll stay behind, I'll keep the goat," try and chase the goat away. When I looked back, and there she was. She always wore an apron. And she's taking that apron off, and she's going this way. And the goat, I saw the goat just charging that apron and then running right around her. And then the goat chased after us. And I said, "He's coming." So my sisters and brothers ran even faster. So at the end of where our driveway was, the road was like this here, and there is a little path that goes that way to the house. So we ran there. And we never, ever locked our house. So when we got to the house, the door was locked. We couldn't get in. So one of my older sisters said, "To the barn!" So we ran to the barn. And there was a ladder that was up there. And we did haying. We had horses too. So every summer we cut the hay. And when you go up the stairs, the ladder like this, there's a doorway where you shove the hay in. So when we got on top there, we just dove right into the hay. And as we were laying there, everybody was safe. And my brother is still out of breath. And he says, "Yo, ganbogo na bach," meaning, "Oh, I think I'm going to die." And my older sisters, "Yeah, this is all your fault." So they were really getting after him. And then we could hear somebody coming up the stairs like that. We thought it was our mother. And then as the thing got closer, it showed its face. Lo and behold, it's that goat. The goat climbed the stairs. My sister says, "Oh my God, let's push let's push the ladder." So the two of them, they pushed the ladder away. And of course, the goat jumped, to save himself, and you could hear him running. We stayed so quiet that we didn't want to bring on anything until we heard my mother open the door downstairs. And she says, "Yoo-hoo, are you guys okay?" And so Mom opened the door, and we all said, yes, we're here. So we had no ladder, no, and we couldn't jump down. So what she did was she dragged the bales of hay, put it there so that we could jump down, and then also lower the pails of milk that we had. And of course me, because I was, I don't know how old I was, 5 years old, old enough to know anyway. So we got down there and then we walked home. And Mom never said anything. She didn't scold us for crying or anything like that. So we walked into the house and we always got milk. Each of us got this much milk. That was the very first time that I ever tasted milk, real milk. And we drank that. It felt like we were rewarded. But anyway, your father's coming home, he said. She said, make sure that we set the table right. Make sure that we have the butter. And so in that can of, one of the cans, there was a heavier milk, cream, like. And so in that cream, she put some salt in there, and we shook that cream like this back and forth. We're in an assembly line. And we shook it until we heard the solid of the pail, and then she opened it, and then it was already solid with butter. She put a little bit more, a little bit salt, and she said, shake it some more. So we shook it some more. And then about 5 minutes after, she says, it's ready now. So you have to set the table because your father's going to come home soon. So we set the table really nice, and every one of us really contributed everything to make nice. And Mama was doing the cooking and that. She made homemade bannock in the oven kind, and then she was going to put that out. So finally, Papa arrived home, and when he opened the door, he saw wash his hands, and then he came inside. I was at the head table, and he sat there and he said, looked at the table, and he says, oh, es non debnochimak tanakiok, meaning my children have worked so hard. They're really good workers. Yeah, he was really praising us. And my mother's dishing her things in there, the food, and she says, oh. And so she began to spill the beans on us, so what we did that day. So that my father got his butter that time, and he had real butter and homemade bannock, and that was the very first time that we learned and saw how the butter was made, because they didn't have that churning thing that we used that time, but we used the old-fashioned way of making butter. So those are some of the stories that I've been writing about. I have 25 chapters that I have written, and there's another story that Mother never ever liked guns. She didn't like guns. So this it was in winter time, and Papa went to town. It was about 9 kilometers, and took a sleigh. And because he had to go for lard, flour, all these important things to go and get into town, and then he would come back again. Mom was getting worried. She was walking up and down the stairs, and every once in a while I'd see her, she'd go outside. And I knew she was getting worried. I was the only one that was home. I don't know where my other sisters. This is when I realized they would go away and to residential school, and then they would come back a certain time. But I didn't know that part then. So it was in the winter, and my mother was kind of worried, and so anyway, she come running in one minute there, and she ran to where my father kept his gun, and she went and got the gun, and then she was taking it out. And she looked for the bullets. She knew where my papa always hid those bullets. so we wouldn't get after them. And she took that, and I knew something was happening. So she says to me, "Don't you come out, you stay right here." So when you know something is happening to your mother, or something is really happening, you want to find out. So I looked through the window and she ran out. And through the back road, out to the lake, because that's where he went. That was the travel way that we had. So when I put my coat on, my rubbers, and I followed her track. Each step where she stepped and I stepped in. So much of listening to your mother, don't go out. Anyway, I wanted to see what was happening. So I looked over there. When I looked through the ice, it was already almost starting to snow too. And I could see the figure. My father walking with the headband here with the rope, pulling that sleigh. Behind there was some dogs, I thought. But they weren't dogs, they were wolves. And they were going to attack my father. They were surrounding him like this. And so that's how come my mother ran in and she was going to shoot. And she knew. So when she shot the leader. Because once you shoot the leader, all the rest disappear. So she took an aim. Now, she didn't like shooting or never did anything like that. But when she took the aim, she shot the leader. And the leader just went down. And all the other, well, this time I thought it were dogs, but they were wolves. They ran away. So there I was, and I thought, she's going to come soon. I better get home. So I ran back into the house, hung on my coat and rubbers, and pretended that I didn't go anywhere. When she came in, she was there, and then my father got there, and he was admiring her, what a shot she was, and just talking so much praise for her for saving his life. And just when he said, "You're a good shot, Mom," I said, "Yes, she certainly is." And that's when she knew that I saw the whole thing, And so I thought, oops. Anyway, she goes like this, and I thought I told you to stay in. And then my father says, "No, don't scold her. She had to see, she had to witness this, So that's one of the stories that happened during the winter when the men had to walk with the sleigh to go to town to go and get food for their families and that. And at that time, the deer and a lot of the things are depleting. No longer were the deer plentiful then, because it was just around during the war, 1945. So that's the time that I'm talking about. So I'm collecting all of these stories that I'm sharing with you. I hope you enjoyed them, and so I thank you for asking me to come and tell these stories. And I'll leave a few minutes here to ask questions if I did not clarify. So, any questions? No? Okay.
Well, miigwech, Shirley, for letting us into a little bit of your life there. That was quite a pleasure. And can folk hear me okay? Is that all right? I just like to say, this is a piece of a series that MCC is working at with partners called Dancing Toward Reconciliation. And this event, where Shirley and Rebecca are present, is the second in the series. And so we're really glad to be working at this. I just wanted to close with a teeny-weeny story about an elders conference that I actually worked on with Shirley and a lot of other wonderful people at Trent. And we named collectively the conference Spirit of the New Dawn. In fact, Shirley, I think you came up with that name. I'm trying to remember. But when I think back to that time 25 years ago, to Spirit of the New Dawn, I think we're here now, and I think, hey, it's time. And so I just want to thank you so, so much again for all you brought to the room. And we have some things that we'd like to gift you with, if that's all right. Rebecca is driving and helping and, walking with Shirley through the speaking engagements and for you. I'm just going to encourage folk to, if they want to have a little word with either Shirley or Rebecca before they leave, have a look at their books quickly. And I'd like to mention that Rebecca has some earrings on a little tree stand there. You said $5 a piece, Rebecca? So please have a look at those. Free to shop Niska. And enjoy the cookies, the cider, and the tea, and each other. So I'd just like to say miigwech.